if some of you may already know, the easiest way to automate anything with SDS is going to be through an API. Because that's not always possible, the providers might not support one roster. We might not have tested with them yet. The only other option really is to automate CSV files. So that's what I'm going to be discussing mostly today. Starting off, though, we're actually going to talk about user lifecycle management. This is integral in any tenant and potentially one of the most difficult things when it comes to education environments. With SDS, there is a limited amount of management that can be done. As I mentioned yesterday, SDS will never delete any object within your tenant. It's hard-coded in to make that impossible. So the only other options that we would have would be to remove users from their groups, mark them inactive, update extension attributes on them, things of that nature. But with that being said, there are still options. The extension attributes that SDS appends onto users can actually be used to leverage dynamic groups, which can allow you to place them in other security groups if needed to limit their access, as well as some other features in Azure Active Directory to actually identify users that haven't logged into the tenant in a certain amount of time and targeted deletion of those accounts. But why we have to do it is primarily because it will free up space within your tenant. A lot of people don't realize this, but every single tenant out there, whether it's an education, government, commercial, will always have a maximum number of objects for that tenant. Right now, the default is going to be 300,000 objects. This counts things like user accounts, M365 groups, SharePoint sites, anything that is considered a distinct object within the organization. That limit of 300,000 can be raised, but there needs to be significant business justification for it. So to help with that, but not only limit the total overhead that your organization would have, we always recommend cleaning up at the end of the school year to some extent, at the very least. The other thing that is important to note with user management is, first and foremost, it will free up licenses, which can then be reassigned to other users coming in. And it also lowers the overall time for a majority of the applications to run. This will be everything from PowerShell scripts to generic calls within Teams or the global address list trying to find someone. So no matter what, even if you only clean up maybe once every 2 years, it is still always recommended to do so just to keep your environment tidy. The option that we have created recently is actually a wizard within Azure Active Directory. This link here at aka.ms/Azure AD Cleanup will actually take you to a wizard within the M365 Admin Center that will guide you through certain steps that can help you clean up your tenant. The one thing that I wanted to highlight here, though, is the identification of user accounts. This selection here, the sign-in activity is actually limited to customers that have AAD Premium, Azure Active Directory Premium. So it might not be available for everyone, but there are still other options, of course. There are options to change graduating students to alumni to keep their accounts active for a certain amount of time, limit the amount of access that they have. You can also block access altogether to prevent access, but still retain the data for the users in case they do come back asking you for certain projects that they might have handed in or other records that they'd like to get access to. And that's unfortunately all that I can really talk about here, but there are still options out there is mostly what I wanted to get to. As far as the SDS portion of it, the groups are, to be honest, the things that cause the most clutter within any tenant. And that's just because SDS will add groups. So from year to year to year, there are going to be thousands of groups being created, which over years can easily add up and get you close to the tenant limit. As I mentioned yesterday, though, there are options for cleanup. We have scripts that are available to help identify the expired groups and remove them. But it's fairly easy, and our support team is always happy to help out with that. From cleanup, we're going to be moving over to automation. Automation, as I mentioned, is extremely simple when it comes to API connections. You set up the connection and you let it go. SDS will sync regularly at different intervals, extracting data and processing and syncing information into the tenant. CSV file automation is a little bit different, though. Without any automation, you'll have to upload files manually, logging into the SDS admin center and uploading them, as I had shown yesterday when creating a profile. But we do have two options for CSV file automation as it is right now. One option is going to be a local file system. The other is going to be through an SFTP site. They both have their benefits, but as far as what our recommendation is, it's normally always going to be the local file system, the local connector. It's arguably the easiest to set up. It doesn't require an SFTP site to already exist. It's also fairly easy to troubleshoot. The SFTP site is, again, still an option, and we will help you set it up to the most or to the best of our abilities, but there are some things that we're not trained on when it comes to the SFTP site automation. Because of that reason, and because the file system connectors is going to be the most common that we use, that's what I'm going to be discussing in length today. And I'll actually be giving a demonstration on it as well. This deck that I have right now contains all these step-by-step instructions for setting up a local file system connector, setting up an on-premise data gateway, but I'll be giving a live demo. There are going to be some things to try and speed up time I'm just going to gloss over. As far as the downloading of the gateway installation, we have links for that. As I mentioned, I added links into the deck that goes into detail about what's needed. But as far as the actual installation of the gateway connector, there are some things that I want to make sure that you're aware of. The first is going to be the account that you sign in with. The data gateway is connected to that M365 account. So if you sign in with one account, that's just a general account that you don't really use for anything else, then that's the account that you're going to have to set up the flow with. It's not always going to be the best option. There are ways to work around that, but it does make things more difficult for the most part. While that's installing, the other thing that I want to start doing at this point is to create a local user. Because the file system connector is going to be on my machine, I need to create a new user on my machine. And I'm going to limit access to other files and then provide full access to the folder where the files I want to automate are. So to do that, I'm going to be putting in some information. And there are a couple settings here that you absolutely must keep in mind. You definitely don't want them to be able to change their password, and you don't want the password to expire, because if you do that, you're going to have to reset up the file system connector. I would still recommend keeping this password around in a safe location, a password vault. But for now, keep it active and that the user cannot change their password, just to make sure that the automation never gets interrupted. You can see that the account is created. All right. I don't want to skip from one to another. So from here, let's go ahead and get to the right location. Yeah. As I mentioned yesterday, I have a lot of different file sets that I've used in the past. But as far as how to get to what we need to, we just want to make sure that we have the folder location, so the full path of it. And I'm actually going to be giving the user access to the v2.1 file format. Well, actually, let's give them access to, yeah, let's just give them access to the CSV file folder, which means that here we're going to go to C and then right click the folder, go to properties, and then we're going to be changing the security for it. The permissions for this connector, for this automation, is going to be full access. So we'll check the names. I normally copy this because you will need this in a later step. So I usually copy that and set it off to the side so I don't have to remember what the machine name is. Once we have that account added in here, we can set full control access and then apply. From here, you can actually block access to everything else just to limit the user's access to anything that might cause any harm to the machine. And that's all we need to do for the folder setup. That part's completely done now. And moving back to the gateway, here I'm going to be using my admin account. As I mentioned, we'll want to make sure that this is an account that is going to be used to set it up. So just wanted to keep that in mind. I will be registering a new gateway. And a recovery key. That's odd. Well, I guess that's actually good because I forgot another step here. This is something that is normally not an issue, but there is a region. You can actually change the region where you want the gateway to be placed. It defaults to the region your tenant is in where the account is set. So it's normally not an issue, but you do want to keep that in mind. If it's in a different region, it's possible that the connectors won't work. I deleted the other gateways. I'm not sure why not. Okay, perfect. The gateway's all set up. There's nothing else we need to do with this. And lastly, we're actually going to be setting up the integration itself, the actual flow. So I normally go to flow.microsoft.com. That is changing to Power Automate.microsoft.com. And I am far from an expert, but it's still very simple to set up the automation. As I mentioned, we have step-by-step instructions, not only in the deck that's going to be provided, but also within our docs pages. So the first thing you want to just make sure is that you're in your primary environment that you're going to be using, as well as logged in with the account that you had set up the gateway with. From there, since we have templates already created, go in here and search school. There's a few different ones in here that other people might have created. The one that we're going to be focusing on, again, is going to be the CSV file automation. And the first thing that we're going to set up is the file system connector. This is actually going to sign in automatically with my account, which is why we recommend it to always be a global admin. This is the account that's going to be used to actually access the SDS endpoints and upload the files. So we'll sign in, automatically does this account, and then we're going to create a new connector. In the root folder. Authentication type is going to be Windows. The username is going to be the full machine name plus the account. Password we set up earlier. The gateway is just going to be the, I guess it didn't remove it. Oh, it's going to be the gateway that we set up. After a couple moments, I'll move us over to the actual template where we can customize it. There we go. That took a lot longer than I've ever had it take in the past. Sorry about that. Once we have both of these created, we'll go ahead and move over to the creation of the flow itself, the actual template setup. There are some settings in here that I want to make sure you're aware of as far as the profile instance ID. This is something that has been causing some confusion in the past. The only thing that you ever want to change in here is going to be the value. This value should always be the profile ID of the profile you want to automate. So in here, we're just going to copy this profile ID and paste it into here. If you're to change the instance ID, this is actually a reference farther down the template to other locations. So if you change this, the entire flow will break. You'll need to start over from the beginning to correct any sort of changes that might have happened. The profile ID finished. We can also set the triggering frequency. Now, with SDS, we normally only recommend processing files once a day. Depending on the organization's size, you might be able to do it more times, maybe twice a day. You might be able to do it even more frequently. But if a sync is already running, if it's already processing files and you try and upload files again, it will fail. And it will just slow down the process because then you have to wait for the next trigger to happen. For my purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and set this at 1 a.m. once a day. Set it to my time zone, which is -5, -6. Lastly is the files in folder. So here you actually do want to put in the file path that we selected earlier, but we want to put the complete folder. So the folder that is going to contain the files and only the files that we want to upload to SDS. Actually, let's do. And I have had some problems with this in the past. Hopefully I don't right now, but go over here and go to show contents. It should log in with the local account that I just created. And there we go. So from here, you can select the actual folder that you want. and then finally the folder that you're going to be extracting the files from. There's no items there, so that's good. Confirm that. So with all of that done, we actually don't need to do anything else. There are some options that you can put in here as far as notifications. I'll set one of those up here too. Once that's done, just save. Okay. And we always recommend testing it. If you do test this, please note that it will trigger a sync. If we do manually or automatically, even though it is a test, you are testing the last step in here, which is verify uploaded files and start sync. Run the flow. It failed because it's still processing. As expected, because it is validating files and it is processing files. There are some things that you can do to help monitor this. What we normally do as far as any sort of monitoring, though, is to set up, edit this again, a new step, and normally we do mail. It's the simplest option there. Send email notification, and this is going to automatically set up a new trigger or a new connector for this. All right. Select who you want to send it to. So I'm going to send it to my 2 admin accounts that I have. This is only going to trigger if the upload of the files fails. This isn't going to identify if the actual sync itself fails. Please keep that in mind. Well, you can, of course, look at some more of the advanced options. Just trying to make this as simple as possible. The other thing to note here is the configure run after. So if we only want to show when the flow had failed, we only want to do if it has failed. Normally I do if it has been failed or if the verified upload has been skipped or timeout, just as a precaution, because any of these mean that the files have not been uploaded to STS. Okay. And there you can see there's a dotted red line. That's to indicate that this is not going to run because of the condition that we set on it for the previous option or the previous setting to fail. We'll say that again. And if we test it again, it's most likely going to fail. I'm pretty sure this is still going to be validating. Yeah. So if we test it, okay, the upload files failed, and this failed. I guess I'll have to fiddle with that a little bit more. Regardless, there are options to set up other monitoring as well. As far as the file system connector, there is one other thing I wanted to mention about that because it is a specific type of connector. The file system connector is considered a premium connector. It might have changed the last I had looked at it. It is only available for flow plan 1 or plan 2. It might have changed since then. But for use with SDS, we've actually made a promise to our customers that SDS as its core functionality, as its most basic functions to automate any sort of school enrollment, group creation, that it will remain free. Because of that, you actually do not need to have Flow Premium, Plan 1 or Plan 2 to use this. The only stipulation is that you absolutely have to set it up from the template setting. If you try and create the connector outside of the template, it will actually fail. If you have the paid for Flow SKUs, then that's fine. You can set up the connection however you want. If you want to set it up within the connectors tab, create it yourself, and then follow one of the templates and select it from the list of available connectors, that's absolutely fine too. Perfect. Just checking the how much time I had left. As I mentioned, there are two templates that we normally use. There is the CSV automation for local file connector, but then there is also the SFTP. The only reason why I hadn't set this up is because it does require you to create a SFTP connection. I don't have a test one that I can use for an example, but as far as everything else, this is just a connector. So once this connector is set up, created, everything else in the template is going to be the exact same. You'll still need to set up the profile ID. You'll still need to determine the trigger and frequency and everything of that nature. I do apologize. My machine seems to be running a lot slower than it used to right now. So everything here is going to be the same except for a couple things here, primarily the upload files, because it needs to list files in folder and needs to actually get the information. So it's going to be treating it from an SFTP site instead. As Stuart had mentioned earlier, though, even if these two templates do not work for your organization, if you don't have an SFTP site, or if the files that you're trying to upload are larger than 30 megabytes, there is still, it's changed a couple times. I believe it's Azure Data Factory. There's also Azure Synapse, where you can upload the files to SDS through those services. There are other things to take into account. We don't have a template created for that. So it is something that you need to set up on your side. But if you have problems with it, if you try setting it up and it doesn't work, you're always welcome to submit a support ticket, and our team will be happy to assist, at least to the best of our abilities. We might need to go ahead, Stuart.
No, I was just going to say real quick, some of the ADF configuration is on GitHub. I'll send the link in the
oh, perfect.
Chat.
I'll add it to the links page that I have in the deck before it gets sent out. Thank you. But as I was saying, our team is not specialized in absolutely everything out there, because there is just so much when it comes to Office 365, Microsoft 365, and the products that it supports. So we might need to bring in other people, other teams to help with that. But when it comes to SDS, we are experts. So what I normally say is we're an expert of one, student of many. But regardless, we'll always help out. Excuse me. Since I still have a little bit more time, I was actually hoping to show this, so very happy for that. For the cleanup, as I mentioned, you can do dynamic groups to actually target the users that you want to clean up, send them into certain security groups if you need to. And you can do that through the extension attributes that are added by SDS. So there are examples on how to do extension attributes as well as custom extension attributes. This is actually the type of attribute that in education, when it's the type of attributes that SDS creates. So to do this, you need to have the full extension attribute name. And you can get that very simply. Most common is going to be PowerShell, because you can call get Azure AD user extension. But just for example purposes, I want to pull it up here. Now, this is actually Graph Explorer, where you can do a lot of the other calls. Graph is, if you're unaware, kind of the backbone into the tenant. There is a lot of information that can be grabbed. So I'm just calling a specific user just to show the different extensions that are available. And from here, you can actually grab the object type, array, sync source. If I added in more attributes into my CSV files, they'd be listed down here in the same type, education, this hexadecimal number, then or extension underscore hexadecimal, then education. So this is actually what's going to denote that it's a SDS created extension attribute. As far as that itself is concerned, that's all I have for user management as well as automation. But if there is ever any questions, you're always welcome to reach out. I have an open door policy. I'll help any customer that reaches out to me, but there are some stipulations that might occur. You might need to submit a support ticket depending on the situation, or you might need to reach out to our support queue. I'm not in the office all the time. But no matter what, we'll get you taken care of.